Hello,
Hello,
Elaine.
hello from Switzerland. Snowy Switzerland, actually,
Oh,
today.
yeah, yes.
Yes.
So I'm in London and it's a crisp, cold day today.
Hmm.
It's December 2020. For those of you who will watch the recording in many years,
Yeah,
this,
good point.
this is Love, Enterprise, and Enchantment. This is
Yeah.
a podcast that we've been running for a few months now, and there are a few episodes at your disposal.
Hmm.
And the way it works is, well, it first started by conversation we had, Elaine, yeah, and
Yeah,
I.
crikey. April,
And,
May. Yeah.
yeah, right earlier in the lockdown, yeah.
Mm.
And we were just chatting to see, to share ideas, thoughts, what was emerging, and importantly, ask each other questions about our respective evolving mindsets and the challenges we found on the way. And this eventually gave birth to a bi-monthly live conversation. And then we decided to share with our audience and press play and send and go live.
Mm.
And it's all about what we explored and what is at the intersection of love, entrepreneurship, and enchantment.
Yeah. Yes. And here we are, and it's December, and who knew a year ago that we'd be doing a podcast together? But the reason why we're doing a podcast together triggered by uh, reconnecting because we couldn't connect
Mm.
in its
Mm.
bizarre way. So what has emerged is exploring hope,
Mhm.
um, doing some serious play in our conversations,
Yeah.
but always looking to a positive future.
Yeah.
And I believe you have a really exquisite quote to
Yes.
share.
And we wanted to put that quotes to you because we, as you say, we've been talking about holding space, about hope, adventure, about love and power, about finding our purpose, about networking, about money, all the stuff that
Mm.
we find at the intersection of love, enterprise, and enchantment. And
Mm.
the quote, so that's what we do. Every time we throw a quote, we leave from there and then we extract nuggets, we share stories, and then at the end we send you on your way with a bit of not homework but some question to ponder. And and that quote today is from someone who's with us at the moment. She's called Rebecca Solnit. She is doing many things she's an author and an activist campaign. She's very prolific. Here's the quote, and I'm putting in the chat for the people who are with us at the moment on Facebook. Hope is not a lottery ticket that you can sit on the sofa and clutch, feeling lucky. It's an axe you break down doors with in an emergency. Hope should shove you out the door because it will take everything you have to steer the future away from endless war, from the annihilation of the earth's treasures and the grinding down of the poor and marginal. To hope is to give yourself to the future, and that commitment to the future is what makes the present inhabitable. So that's
Mm.
quite a lot to think about, isn't it?
It is. It's a big quote, but I really love the essence of it, which is about action.
Yeah,
It's about acknowledging fear,
yeah.
but not caving into it. And for me, it speaks of interaction and
Mhm,
asking for help and coming together to collaborate
mhm.
and really choosing very actively. So we go back to Joanna Macy's active hope,
Which
choosing
we use at the beginning of a
right at the beginning
yeah.
and being very active in hope isn't something you wait for. Hope is something that drives you to create and to create the future that you want to unfold,
Yeah.
not waiting for it to arrive. Because I think for a long time we have been allowing others, politicians, governments, etc., big business, big corporate, to shape what the future looked like and tell us
Mm,
that alternatives weren't possible. And what this year has proved, if nothing else, is you break the system apart, you break status quos apart, you break myths apart, hope comes alive again, and seeds are like exploding like a desert after rain. Hope should be and needs to be exploding everywhere.
Yeah, I see that as a responsibility, indeed.
Mm, yeah.
And it's true that in our communities of social entrepreneurs and change makers and what have you, that they've been working at it all the time. You know, they've been handling hope, but not just sitting on the chair and just pondering hope. There've been
Right.
the entrepreneurs that we're working with as support or that we convene. Or that we tease, that we
Yeah,
amplify.
I like that.
And,
Please,
yeah, tease. Come on,
please.
come on, come on. They, yeah, they've just been, they just haven't been sitting on the benches all that time. Hope is a responsibility. It's a daily attitude. It's something that they share, they disseminate, but also it's accompanied by action. So
Yeah,
from thinking
absolutely.
to action is pretty much hope when it's a verb and it's an action verb.
Mm,
Becomes very interesting, isn't it?
yes, yes,
Um,
yes. And I really like what you just picked up on, which is the action part of it, the active part of it. And for ourselves, we have also been going through this journey of going back to imagination and ideas and creativity to really pause and while there's that, and from is it the desiderata, while all around you are losing their heads, like in the storm, just pausing to see what is happening and where it might go, and coming back to that imagination ideas is what is allowing the pivot.
yeah. How does it translate in do you have example stories? Because I think we can talk at length about hope, but how does it translate into very pragmatic ways? Do you have examples?
Yeah, well, there's an example for me. Two young women entrepreneurs, in fact. One is 15, but she started her social enterprise at 14, and she's an Australian young woman, Katura Halliday, and she has something called 8 to 8 education, 8 times 8 to educate, and it's about an 8x8 art frame.
I like it.
And she was selling that, so she was already doing that. But actually, what this whole year has driven for her, that I've seen, is to become more vocal, to really continue to drive her social enterprise forward, to continue to say, you need to be listening to youth voices and what we want from the future, especially as young women, because this year has been catastrophic for girls' education. We were already out of the loop on education, but girls accessing education needs to now scale up, and you need to listen to us to how that happens.
And does she do that with her arts? How does she do? Can you explain me the link? How does that work together? Does she use their?
Yeah, she was using. Yeah, her art is. She was selling art pieces to fund to work in partnership with a charity called Mission Educate in Mozambique to fund stuff. And then what actually she also does is actually take art supplies out to in Australia, rural Australia communities, is to then encourage those communities to become storytellers about their lives, and so that elevates it to a new level. So what she's doing is, it's not just her voice advocating, it's facilitating other voices to advocate for themselves. And I think that was really transformational. And art and creativity is really, you speak your own voice with your own language and your own voice.
So it is not allowing anyone to translate it for you, but it's really, it's bringing the message where immediately raw, almost in its raw shape, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So hope as a way to, so hope then is translated with just helping others having a voice, or more of a voice, amplifying their voice.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And I think it's about equipping we mustn't lose sight of enabling people to find their voices, which, to bang on about libraries again, but that's why libraries are so special.
Yeah.
So special in the hearts of communities, because whether it's a school community, academic, or a public library, libraries are the spaces where people find their own voice.
Mm.
And then they build their skills, and then they share that voice, they share their solutions. So for me, the worrying thing is like bookshops closing, libraries closing, these are, or as well as schools closing, but the informal spaces that bind communities, that really seeds problems for the future. So that is why they need to open. That is why we need to cross digital divides, but also have access to spaces where communities can still come together safely.
And write stuff from the future as well, because there is book from the past, and when you learn to write about your hopes and etc. I see.
Yeah. And
So
what about
hope.
you?
I've got many examples, as you imagine, because what Ogunte was with link up many entrepreneurs and change makers from different parts of the world. But one, of course, that I spent quite significant time developing an interview with Ajaita Shah earlier this year. Ajaita Shah is the founder of Frontier Markets. They're based in Jaipur, India. And why I'll pick Ajaita and her work for that topic of hope and future thinking is that she sees how a whole system works together, and she gradually builds, put all the elements together to make this becoming a reality. So Ajaita works, as I say, in frontier markets, so remote rural communities. And just to put you back in the context, in the world, or in India, you had 500 million people who of the 500 million these people who live in out of reach of traditional retail outlets, and they don't get access to products and services they need to build better and dignified lives. So the concept of that Ajaita developed with her team is that these rural households needed to be treated as dignified customers. So they needed to access high quality services at the doorsteps.
Oh wow!
And it first started with they first started to distribute solar-based products, simply because people didn't have enough light to cook, to live, when it was dark, etc., to do their homework or housework, and whatever you used to get some light was also quite polluting, or fuel-based, or expensive, extortionate, etc. So that she developed the whole process of distributing solar-based panels. But she actually worked with women and invested in local women, to drive that part of that rural economy. And they started to distribute these solar-based products, but also learn to maintain them, and learn to be the ones hub contact for all the kind of little shops in the area. There were the links, and the concept was for them to have an easy life, or they call it Saral Jivan. I'm not sure if I pronounced well. So they developed a whole range of energy products. They took them to these rural households. The women started to grow their networks. They learn how to be more entrepreneurial. They learn tech skills by maintaining products as well, to have a sort of longer shelf life. These women also, which she called Saral Jivan Sahelis, or easy life friends. So these women started to also convince more and more rural households to switch to solar energy. And then they, long story short, they started to distribute more than just clean energy products, but also sort of commodities, all sorts of things that people wouldn't have in other circumstances. And that means also having access to digital banking. Can you imagine when COVID struck, that they had to stop all this at some point, because of course a lot of men came back to rural places having lost their work. They came back to their households. Women get more work to do. Sometimes there were some dreadful circumstances by which they were submitted to abuse, but also they lost the ability to gain extra money. That means also economic power. That means respect. That means status, and sort of gender, sort of better gender equality. And so that was quite hectic, but very rapidly, I think that Jaita managed to rebuild the process and extend the range of product that they could distribute, and gradually it's going to come back. But it's been hard. But my point here is hope is that she saw there are various elements that were connected all these people.
Yeah.
What if women are the bankers in these rural communities? What if they are the maintenance people? What if they are the entrepreneurs? And the concept of easy life friends. It's fantastic, because you ask, what is it that I want to become? What do I wish for these communities to become, these women to become? And everything follows through. Yes, if that is not hope, but and hope built in a constructive manner, what is this?
Exactly.
So I just love it.
Well, isn't it? Yeah,
I really love it, because we can learn a lot from it. And you mentioned that about how all institutions were maybe not felt disjointed. How can you make sure that you link up all the part of a system and make sure that it flourishes together?
Exactly.
And you find an easy life.
You find an easy life. And that's what's really striking about that example is, I'm looking at it thinking, why wouldn't she kind of look across UK or Switzerland and go, well, there's lots of rural spaces in other countries that need that connection. So not just for women, but for older people. How would that, it's a translatable model. It's just that we're told often it's not. And that's a global South solution, or that's a solution for just people in poverty. And you're like, well, actually,
with some companies, which I will not name, were like a bit reluctant to share their, to be part of that. For instance, the digital shopping that just also emerged because they had the smartphones, at frontier markets, allowing digital banking. But also, okay, if we have that, then we can do the digital shopping and then bring this, and then people can just do their shopping. But we need the products. So very global companies need to say, yes, we want to be part of that. Again, I won't name them. They're present in India, but you need to convince them. So again, that story is a global story.
Yeah.
And they were happy at the end. They get even more customers. And when you know the number of customers that we're talking about, 500 million people that couldn't be reached, or people that this is not good too much. Blah. No one had the idea to actually take the local people as distribution hubs.
Yeah. It's these. That's what is so interesting and positive. Is this disruption, this rupturing, is allowing different things to come to the surface, and to make space for that. And that starts with, as you say, maybe it's not just sitting down and imagining and playing with ideas. It's the quality of that imagining which has that purpose.
Yes.
Around play, around love, around the end game, which is, can I create a solution which is impactful for people and the planet, like these two interlinked, interdependent things, as opposed to can I just make profit,
And in my previous stories, who have I forgotten to include in that story? So for this example, frontier market, and the big, large corporate companies that say, of course, they wanted to make a profit and reach as many people as customers as possible, but they desisted because they didn't think, they forgot that women were the missing links, were always invisible, not even part of their, commercial thinking.
I know.
And the Jaita said, look, they're here, they're in front of you. And they've done the legwork of training them, but also and amplify what they already had, a kind of entrepreneurial and resilient spirit. So who is it that you've forgotten to include in your story?
Which I think is super topical, and that is, if anything, that is one of the call to actions from this conversation today. Not least because the impact on women and girls this year is so phenomenal. We're already fighting for gender parity, gender inclusion, etc. Merit, working on merit into spaces. And when schools close, schools are often a space where girls can access menstrual products. And if they can't access them, then they are not able to attend school. So we already knew that was a huge problem. And a young woman entrepreneur, Filipa Carreira in Mozambique, who has Wamina sanitary products, she had already created 2 or 3 years ago washable sanitary products, and she was already doing training in education, sex and health education in schools on this in Mozambique. But what she understands is the problem just went exponential. Because when those girls couldn't access, she was out there delivering to homes sanitary products so that at least those girls could maintain dignity, and also then going into social distancing outside spaces to do the training anyway over this year. So she had responded, adjusting, adapting, flexing, which is the essence of resilience, into these spaces, knowing that if she just stopped what she did because she couldn't do it in a school, then the impact, the seed is planted that is so terrible as the future rolls forward. So what she had done was address that, find different ways, moved like water into different spaces in order to be able to address it. And I think that just comes back to this point of those girls, those young women are a new generation of innovators, entrepreneurs, employees. But if they don't get into education spaces, if they don't get education from something as simple as not having sanitary products, you don't just lose a generation, you lose 2, 3 generations. And that's where hope lies in simple things. Hope lies in access and imagination.
What is our responsibility to create hope? What is our responsibility when imagining better systems? Do you know, I'm a fierce defender of just flipping ideas on their head just to make our things differently. There's a friend of mine called Patricia Cotton. She's a Brazilian, and she created that concept of upside down thinking. So whether it's upside down or from flip to side, whatever you want, but how can you flip your ideas? So thinking about your example here is, what is an education context where everybody's welcome, whatever their ability, disability, or time of the month or non-time of the month, or familiar or home context, etc. What is then, how does an education context look like when it does these things, when it cherishes relationships, when it's utilizes heroes, everyday heroes, not as people you worship, but as people who help you create a better life? What is an education looking like when it's a vehicle for change for the better, not just change for the worse? What is an education context? How does the education context look like when it's wholesome and inclusive and purposeful and respectful of also your cultural traditions, not a sort of one size fits all, just scaling for the sake of scaling someone else's ideas somewhere 5,000 miles away? What is an education system? What does the education system look like when it enables you to imagine and by default you will be accepted.
Yeah, that
it's
is
not hope.
it's really exciting. And I think that integration for me between health, formal, informal education, different ways of looking at education. And when you start to play by looking through those lenses, you see that physical buildings take on a different positive role. I think in many ways, the trajectory that healthcare has tried to take in terms of polyclinics, for want of a better phrase, but to be these hubs, I think schools and libraries are this social infrastructure that
with social prescription, all that kind of ideas that should be much more funded. You said so. There's something you say very often is that when you want to pivot, you can't just cling on these old concepts, but you need to open up. A library doesn't need to be something in the built environment. A library is a concept first and foremost. Where is it? Or a school, where is it when it's not between four walls? Would you say that? Would you say? Can you tell us more about not clinging on?
About not clinging on. Well, I think this is the year that is really interesting about
2020.
Clinging on to what is perceived to be safe, but is actually safe discomfort, and is something. I think there are two elements really. I think this year calls us, in terms of accessing our resilience, to speed up in slowing down so that you calm down and take a sort of look at what is happening around you, which I think goes to the desiderata once again of all around you are losing their heads. Simply, like, it is okay to slow down. You will start to see the exit points instead of speeding up because you're afraid. The more you slow down and take stock, what you do is come back to the center of who you are. And I think the second part of that is to differentiate between the two needs of significant, which is where you feel credible and respected, and the need to feel loved, connected to people. These are two very separate needs, and often they get blurred. And when we're afraid, they get really blurred because we think we won't be loved if we're not credible and respected. And what this year is doing to us all is stripping away old status quos and is really calling for us to take stock, come back to center, come back to laying out your skill set, but also looking at what is happening around you and where that might go, and what role do you need to have in, or want to have in, ensuring that that's a positive future.
God, there's a lot to unpack here.
I know.
You make another thing about. It's always about the all the terms that are very much conflated, and that reminds me of that term that we see everywhere. That's very much the clinging on without us even realizing. That's build back better. The word "back" in the middle just make me very itchy. No. I don't want back. No, just liberate yourself.
Exactly.
Liberate yourself, because it's not going to be the same. No. And people, I think there's a lot of example we can take from the most hopeful among us at the moment, and who were there fighting for their lives well before COVID happened, and they probably went through SARS and went through Ebola, they went through wars and migrants. People saying the situation is so dire. That even if my heart is here, I need to leave it behind to move away to save my children's skin, and etc. etc. And they hope, and they go across a terrible ordeal to find something else, and God knows what they find along the way. So I think there's that, if I may, there's that quote from Marina Gorbis from Institute for the Future that you remind me. One of the 5 principles for thinking like a futurist is to remember that we are all immigrants to the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you haven't got hope, then you go nowhere. But hope will be what will drive you further, and expanding your mind. Yeah,
and I love that. That quote, I think, is so special. She's an immigrant herself, and many years back in the US. And for me, that I think that's just the great leveler, that we are all immigrants to the future. The future unfolds as you choose to unfold it, and how you collaborate and how you create community around you and with you. And so these divisions, these false divisions, this scarcity mindset, which said, no, we can't collaborate, we can't cross borders, we can't help other people in dire need because they'll take something from us, is this year, if no other, has surely broken down that misunderstanding when you think climate change will make you an immigrant, a migrant, if you don't take action to fix those problems. If you don't care for your community, you will be leaving with that community. What has come to other people will come to you. You can't be in ivory towers anymore.
No.
It is about hope, building hope. Hope is active, but build hope by building solutions. Solutions are not perfect, but they can be impactful and thoughtful and inclusive.
So I'd like to close beautifully. Well, it will be beautiful. That beautiful session of ours today that will close as well. This series on love, enterprise, and enchantment. And maybe it's one thing that people can take away is don't cling on hope. But hope is a verb. Hope is something you do every day. And if you want to start with your own neighborhood and build that kind of build these nuggets, build this ecology of beautiful connections and actions, and this is how you will have it's going to be rewarding, because by building that in your neighborhood you will see immediate effects.
Yes, exactly.
Ellen, it was a pleasure again.
Yeah, fantastic to speak to you across the ether. Very ether. Yeah. And
it was a pleasure. So it was our series about love, enterprise, and enchantment. The recordings are available on many platforms. Look us up and have fun, and go back to the previous sessions and have a go at the challenges with you.
Call to actions. Yeah, exactly.
Ellen,
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.